want to teach depends on what you want to teach. And I started to get really annoyed. And when people, you're being over accommodating with each other, and nobody's just being direct. I want this, and it was really me who wasn't. And so I was annoyed with myself. But of course, I expressed it as annoyance with Jack because that's what we do when we're in a love relationship. Usually, we project whatever our. It was just a slight shiver of aversion. It wasn't like a big. It wasn't a big deal. But we tend to project that onto whoever we're with and forget the field in the surround that we're in, which is a surround of love and patience, because the emotion that I was having at that moment wasn't really loving or patient, rather impatient and irritated. And these moods, ups and downs, I mean, that's mild, but we have them very intensely as well. I just watched a show it came out a few years ago by Hannah Gadsby called Nanette. Fantastic, brilliant. And at the end, if you can sort of hang in there through all the coming out jokes, at the end, she talks about her rage and expresses her rage, but in the most brilliant way. And this is who we are as human beings. And we have these intense emotions that come and go and rise and fall with these emotions. But the backdrop, the backdrop of it is actually a kind of surround of love. And how do we experience that? Like, how can we tap into that? A story that I really love about the poet Rilke. One day he was walking in the Luxembourg Gardens with a friend, and there was an old lady begging, and she was wearing a black shawl over her rounded back, and she was in a posture of misery, and he had some money in his hand, getting ready to offer some money to her, and the friend he was walking with said, you don't even know her. It could be an act. She might even be rich, sitting there begging. And what Rilke did, and I don't remember the detail if he went and got it or if he had it, or most of us aren't walking around with beautiful red roses, but he had a rose. Maybe he just got it. You know how those people sell roses. And he just went up to her when they got, right opposite her, and he placed it on her knees. And she grabbed his hand. She looked up, first of all, because she never looked up when people were putting coins in her container, but she looked up and she looked right at him, and she grabbed her hand and she kissed it. She grabbed his hand and she kissed it. And then she just stood up and trotted away. And I thought this could be a really beautiful Zen koan. Why did she stand up and trot away? Why did she do that? What do you think? Anybody have an idea? I mean, we intuitively sense something, but what is it? I mean, just guess anything. It's not class. Yes. She was seen for more than just being a beggar. She was seen for being a woman, a person, someone worthy of respect and a gift, worthy of a gift, not just coins, but a beautiful rose. And later, the friend said, I mean, because she was the one who was writing about this, she said, it was actually such a powerful lesson for her, because she said Rilke made people beautiful, like just brought out the beauty in people. And here she'd been going along with this kind of, a little small, suspicious mind, and he offered this gesture of love, well, of respect and attention. And I was reading this in French, and I don't know who the teacher was because I just actually took some notes, but which is how I remembered the story. But one of the things this person said was, "Épousez la vie," like marry your life. And I thought, well, you're kind of already married to your life. And when none of us really want a divorce from our life, no matter how tough it is, we still, and many, certainly at least several of you are encountering really tough situations in your lives right now. No matter how tough it is, we have the sense that we want it to continue. We would like it to go on. So I thought, what épouser la vie? Maybe it means embrace your life. But it was that would have been a different word. It was marry your life. And I flashed on the conversation of last night, and I thought, oh yeah, like we're married. That means, I mean, like I said, that was the microchip. Like we all have our tendencies to react to certain ways to our own irritability and when we're fed up with somebody or whatever it is. And I nicknamed mine Key in the Door because I just want to leave. And even when it's just like a tiny, like, moments of misunderstanding, like last night, I noticed I don't do it because I've, been practicing and I sit in the teacher seat, and so I restrain myself. But I feel like just standing up and walking away. And that's a very different standing up and walking away than the old lady with the rose, right? Very different feeling to that. But why do we hang in there with people? Sometimes we have no choice. They're in our life or in our workplace. So why do we choose to turn our attention toward metta, toward loving kindness? Why do we do that? Why do we do that? You answer, then I'll give mine. Maxine. We have to use the mic, sorry.
To shift how I feel, it looks on by me. To shift how I feel. Okay, third time. That's all it is. It's my perspective that needs to change. I can't change the other person as much as I want to.
I know.
So the idea is that, because I just had that last night. I have a roommate. I threw away your aluminum foil. I said, it was a piece of aluminum foil. I don't care. Just throw it away. And I went, oh, I could have said that a little nicer, And I realized it was me that got hurt. I mean, yeah, she rolled her eyes, I'm sure. But it was me that was hurting at that moment after I said that. So I think all of why I may want to go to loving kindness is just to shift how I'm feeling inside. Because it feels so much better when I'm patient.
Yeah.
And it feels so much better when I'm forgiving. And if I hang out in that other place, it's a rabbit hole. That's all.
Thank you. Yeah. So we could say that it's an act of generosity and an act of selfishness, both. Yeah. It's both. It's kind of a win-win. Yeah, thank you.
I want to thank you. I totally subscribe to that as well. And something I notice that I do for myself is when I'm in the midst of an interaction, in order to try to step back a little bit, I find myself saying, what is it that I don't know? So in that interaction, I find myself, it helps me open up a little bit more if I can actually say, what is going on over there that maybe I don't know about that it can help me create some space before I respond. And that's sort of a tool that I use.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think and in those moments when we're not feeling loving, of course, that's the chance to expand our capacity to love. It's exactly where we don't want to, but it's exactly where we can. And that's where we can also frame what's happening. We may see them as obstacles on our path, the people or the event or whatever it may be, but it's actually the stuff of our path. It's the landscape of our practice, working with the nooks and crannies of our hearts that are maybe not filled with loving awareness. But that's what we're here to do. And I think one of the reasons we hang in there is because we value and respect love. We care about that. It matters. it matters in our world, it matters in our lives. And I think the other reason also that we hang in there is because we sense that we're part of something bigger, that there is something bigger happening here, something going on that is more universal and that is kind of woven into the experience of aliveness, of being alive in the universe. And that, and then we long for that, and that longing is what draws us to come here and meditate. I mean, we might think we're meditating just to lower our blood pressure or get rid of our headaches, or all of those are worthy causes, by the way, very compassionate things to do. But at the same time, I think deeper down, there's a different kind of longing, and the longing to connect with and have it be a living part of our experience, with that love, the benevolence that is in the world. And I think especially right now when, everybody's flipping on what's the latest coronavirus news. Well, this is a reality. We have to be aware of it, of course. And I think there's going to be a lot more clean hands in the world, at least our world here. I went to try and get my favorite hand sanitizer, and of course it was all sold out. So again, when I think if we all oriented more toward a loving spirit of, we'll get through this and it'll be what it is, and we'll just some sense of solidarity and unity, and knowing this is what humans do. We take care of each other when we're sick or hurt. This is what we're meant. This is, I think, what we're actually wired to do, to take care of each other when we need it. And if we could focus on that piece instead of just the fear, oh, maybe this and maybe that, and oh my God, my savings, and the fears that come up, understandably. But I don't know that. In some ways, it feels like that's the best antiviral that we can use right now, is not letting the fear go viral, but really staying as steadily present with our own loving hearts as we can manage to do. So I obviously really love sharing with you and could talk a lot longer, but I want to leave space for you. Because I actually love you.
You do?
Yes.
Oh. Yeah, when you talk about, in that beautiful French expression, marrying your life. So, Trudy and I were married by Ram Dass about 4 years ago. We kind of eloped a little bit to Hawaii and had this little private wedding in his garden and so forth. And as we were getting married, there were a couple of interesting things. Ram Dass was asking, like, what kind of vows you want, and he said, should I, pronounce you husband or wife? And Trudy said, well, no, actually, I want a husband, but I don't want to be a wife. In fact, she said, I'd like to have a wife, like all of us want somebody. But anyway, so how are we going to do this? Finally, we ended up, Ram Dass pronounced us husband and Trudy. That's what I got to. But then partway through the ceremony, when it's like loving one another till death do you part, and she talked about marrying your life, Trudy said, well, why death do we part? How about many lives?
I said, how about lifetime after lifetime?
Lifetime after lifetime.
He blanched.
I blanched. I stepped back. I said, Trudy, one lifetime at a time. Let's see how this goes.
I was like, why would I have to go through the whole thing again in my next life, dating and meeting somebody?
But it reminds me of a beautiful story, and I'll tell this story in part also in the spirit, since we're talking about Ram Dass. And maybe I said this in previous weeks, but we were at these memorials celebrating our close relationship and all we'd learned from our love for and from Ram Dass. And Krishna Das in San Francisco, who's this beautiful musician that's been chanting for years with Ram Dass, said, I met Ram Dass when he was, not long after he came back from India, Baba Ram Dass in his white robes and things. And it was amazing. He was teaching these spiritual teachings right away that were so wonderful, and I followed him to India. But it also turned out he was, he was a person as well as all that beautiful teaching. And he said, and now I can say, after 40 years, Ram Dass became the person we thought he was when we met him. And it was a really beautiful kind of tribute that we actually can grow into. So the story concerns, it's an ancient story, an old monastery that had fallen on hard times, and it had been a celebrated monastery, but then gradually the number of people there started to diminish. It was in the middle of this beautiful park, but as the monks there got older and they died, there was only 6 left. And it was hard to take care of this big place, and they were a little bit discouraged. And as you know, even in modern times now, there are these big monasteries that used to be full of people, Catholic monasteries and elsewhere, that hardly have anybody in them anymore. People aren't so much drawn to that. So the abbot, Father Abbot, and the brothers got together and said, it seems like we're dying out. Is there anything, what should we do? How should we live out this part of our monastic life? And he said, well, maybe we should talk to the rabbi. And it turned out in that area in the woods, at the other end of the woods, was this beautiful little hermitage or cabin of a Hasidic rabbi mystic master. So the abbot said, I'll go and speak with the old wise rabbi. Maybe he can help us. So he went, glad to see you again. They took tea. It was a lovely meeting. And he described the difficulties of sort of the order dying out. And before he left, the rabbi said, well, I don't have much to say to you, but I just have this intuition, that maybe the Messiah is among you, and then sort of dismissed them. Now, that's a kind of wild thing to say. Why would the rabbi say that? But anyway, so he went back, the abbot, and they said, so what did the old wise rabbi say? He said, well, he didn't really have anything for us, except he said this one strange thing, maybe the Messiah is among you. They began to reflect, well, what if that were true? I mean, the abbot did seem very wise to the others. Maybe he's really the Messiah. But then as they reflected further, well, what about Brother Elrod? He's a pain in the ass. He criticizes, but the thing is, he's almost always right. Maybe he's the one that knows, Or maybe I thought Brother, Jonathan was kind of lazy because he just loves to gaze at the trees and live in kind of this open present. Maybe he's the Messiah that we've been waiting for. Or, oh my gosh, maybe they meant me. How could that be? That's just not possible. But just in case, on the off chance that it might be so, each person in the community began to treat one another with this great respect. So she's the Messiah and he's the Messiah. And well, what if maybe I'm even self-respect? And the community started to blossom in a kind of care and love. And once in a while, families would go and picnic around there. And the old brothers who would come out, were so gracious with everyone who came because they were practicing this love and respect that the family said, hey, this is a nice place. And they invited other people. And pretty soon what had become a moribund and dying place started to have visitors, and people come for the services and bring their children and picnic because the brothers were so full of love. And then young men said, hey, maybe we should join this order. And pretty soon the monastery started to flower and grow again. So the hint of this is it's not only to treat each other with respect, but to imagine that person there is like the coolest person in the entire world. And they're here with incredible gifts, and maybe they're the Messiah, or maybe they're the Buddha or Kuan Yin, And they're doing the perfect thing to help you get enlightened. You know, they're all your teachers, and they've been assigned to be themselves in a way that's exactly perfect for you to learn the deep truths of love and compassion and so forth. And to see the divine in one another, which is kind of how Ram Dass ended his life. He was Mr. Love, and you'd come in and it didn't matter. He'd say, he'd love everybody. I love you, and I love you. And he'd gaze in your eyes, I really love you. And you go, really? You know? And then he said, also, I love the sky and the banana tree outside the window, because he was in Hawaii, you know, and I love the storms that come in. And I love the wooden floor and the plants and the teacup. And he would just go around loving everything. And at first it seemed maybe a little excessive. In fact, a friend of ours, a filmmaker who'd made a movie about Ram Dass, said, you really love everything. How about that coffee stain on the rug that we have to clean up? Ram Dass said, I love it. A few weeks later, a package arrived. It was a piece of carpet with a coffee stain on it in a gold frame that said, put this on your altar, you know. But there's something in this that's following up with exactly what Trudy was saying, and with the metta practice that you did this morning, you'll do it, and again, it can feel mechanical, or it can feel rote, or it can bring up its opposite. But as we plant these seeds, and as we see that there's actually something extraordinary in each person, everybody's absolutely extraordinary, there's this invitation to love, to treat the world as if it's divine, to gratitude. And that, you know, is the deepest kind of generosity. It's the generosity of the heart that says, here we are in this mysterious field together. When I do wedding ceremonies, which I've done, I don't do them much anymore, but I used to do them. One of the things that I would say to people as they were prepared to make their vows and so forth, do you take this person as is? And I would explain, when you go to the used car lot, there's a sign in the window, sold as is, you know that sign? Because we have these ideas about how somebody is supposed to be that interfere with that other vision that Trudy was pointing to, where we actually have that capacity to see each other. The Buddha talked about it with kindly eyes, to see when you meet someone in India and you say namaste, it means I see the divine in you. I honor that spark of holiness that is who you really are. And then we start to treat each other that way. And then the world that way, even with its difficulties. The poet says, my friend Alison Luderman, poet, she writes, sun drapes a buttered scarf across your cheek. Rain shares its divine melancholy. Rose opens herself to your glance. The whole world keeps whispering to you, nibbling your ear like a neglected lover, right? And it's true, when we open ourselves, not just to one another, but when you do metta for the newborn children and the animals of the world, and loving kindness for all the spring blossoms that are coming and so forth, there comes a capacity to marry your life, to marry this life. And it brings a freedom to heart, a generosity, an ability when the difficulties come to say, oh, that's just a difficulty. That's irritation or anger or fear or whatever. But that's not who we really are. Who we really are in this mystery is so much bigger than that, is love.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Trudy, dear.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you.
One last thing I forgot I was going to say is sometimes it's fun to go around, and I've done it, going into the marketplace or into difficulties, whatever, and imagine that you have the Dalai Lama holding your hand with you on the walk, or that you have Kuan Yin, with their arm wrapped around and saying, let's go do this together. Or Trudy.
Yeah, so this is a time for you to, ask any questions that you have about your practice, or if you want to share something, an insight about how you've been working with the principles of mindfulness, compassion, loving kindness in your life. Somebody will bring you a mic.
Hi, my name's Max. I'm currently reading your book, The Wise Heart, and my girlfriend, I just read the personalities chapter a couple weeks ago, and I had kind of, in my own mind, formulated what I believed my own personality type to be. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of had a fun little evening where I read it to her, and then we both, because we didn't want to manipulate what the other person said about us, so we wrote it down on a piece of paper and then shared what we thought each other's personality types were. And we actually got it right. We both guessed what we had said for ourselves, we guessed for each other. So that was kind of just a fun little exercise I thought I'd share. But I think my question was, I tend to, piggybacking on the personality type, only see the good in people. And that has, sometimes I can be kind of naive, in my understanding of what a person is like. And then I think I can also sometimes be insensitive to, like if a third person is introduced to the interaction and they have some type of traumatic experience with that individual or with something, I can be almost insensitive to their experience when I talk about, oh, we should think about, all of the things that have led up to this person's life, in this moment. I can miss kind of the pain that has been created between the other two people. And I guess I'm just kind of curious how, it's been something I've noticed in my life over the last few months, and I'm trying to figure out how to work with that, I guess.
So I love the question, because there's so much intelligence in what you call a question that you already see. First of all, you're noticing your personality, or your girlfriend's noticing her personality. We have personalities. They're weird. I mean, they are, And just like you get born with a body, you get born with a personality. It's not like it's just formed by your parents or something. Kids are really different. So you have it. And the point isn't to change it and get a new one. It doesn't work that way. But what you've done, which was so beautiful and you described, is you recognize your tendencies, which have a lot of good qualities of seeing the good and so forth, but also have naivete or ignorance. And you're marrying your personality with some wisdom or discernment. And somebody might have a different personality of, delusion or judgment or things that are habit. You can see that it has a value, it has things that are not so helpful. And when you become mindful, as you just described, you can see that and foster what's beneficial and not get caught in the other. So I just loved how you already practicing with it.
Thank you.
Anton.
Yes. So recently, I've been wanting to cultivate more humility in my life, and I'm having a challenge in doing that, both with myself and my relationships. So I wonder what is the how of humility, because lately, looking back, I feel like humility almost always comes to me exclusively as a form of punishment, when either I've done something bad or I feel like I've done something bad, and it seems to be inescapable. So how do I make that jump to proactively cultivating humility rather than having it me sort of like slap in the face?
That's a really interesting question. It reminds me what I was watching yesterday. She makes a distinction between humility and humiliation. And it sounds like for you, there's like a trace of humiliation that comes that then brings you a little more to your knees or to be humble. And the question is it possible to cultivate this without life having to humiliate me? I don't know, actually, if that's possible. We say something has been humbling, and to me that usually means we've been humiliated in some way. Something has been shown to us, either about ourselves or the way we behaved, or something we've perceived it, and then we've accepted. It's been taken in, and then it morphs or transforms into humility. Oh, I was arrogant there, or my ego blinded me to seeing their truth, or but then it becomes humbling, which is something that feels good because it's letting go. It's letting go of an image or a mistake or a perception that turns out to be inaccurate. Does that make sense? That's just how I see it. But it's kind of beautiful inside your question too, because if you can see those things that happen to you as humbling and bringing you more humility, that in itself is that's a stance of humility. The eagerness to learn, the openness to learning is humility. Do you see? So it's kind of, you already have it. You want to strengthen it. And is it possible to do it without pain? I don't know. Life can be painful. Yeah. I think another doorway into humility, though, is also realizing we're not that separate, that we're part of humanity. We're part of a life that's bigger than we are, as Jack was saying. And it's not that the whole world and everything in it revolves around me all the time. That's another kind of humility that comes, I think, more naturally with just our meditation. And it's not painful. That part is actually joyful. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. You hear me? Oh, there we go. Hi. I don't know if I'll get this question out exactly as I have it in my head, but I think what I'm struggling with right now is in meditation, especially loving kindness meditation, that you are offering that love to everyone in your life and also beyond. But then living one's life is about trade-offs and not being able to say yes to everything. At least in my experience, that to decide which relationships you're cultivating outside of meditation as you're living your life. How to make those trade-offs and know which relationships to cultivate and which ones you, as a result, have to say no to. And then also seeing transformation in relationships and knowing when the time is to let go, even if the other person is not ready to let go of you. I don't know if that makes sense.
So there's a couple of things that this really important question points to. First, in terms of yourself, that the circle of loving kindness and compassion doesn't work if it doesn't also include one especially important element, which is you. So when you think about all the needs and taking care of people and being loving and so forth, you also want to ask the question, is this compassion or loving for this one as well as them? Otherwise it falls into a kind of codependence or some savior complex or something. But if you pause and you say, is this right for serving or being, respectful, loving of others, and is it respectful for this one? And because you have to do that. Nobody else can do that for you. That allows there to be a kind of balance or discernment. So that's the first piece. And then the second, Trudy and I have been talking about this some, is and maybe even more so in our professional roles and at this stage in our lives, that we disappoint a lot of people. And that we have to somehow come to terms with that. Because we have loving connections and people who've been part of things we've done for years. And some of them want more than we can do. Our task is somehow to treat them and all of that respectfully, but also to remember to pause and say, is it good for this one? And the point isn't, it would be inflation to say, all right, now we're going to take care of everyone. That's not your job. Your job is to take care of this one well, and then as you do, to be able to extend in the same way that kindness to others. Do you want to add anything?
On the other side, Clark, the lake is there.
First, I have to say I'm just noticing in groups, trying to be aware. And we've been boys day to day, which my rule is if men start talking, I don't talk. But I apologize to the universe for being yet another man who's talking. I just notice in groups, men are so much more comfortable talking in here. Usually there's a balance, but it's been all men today.
Wait a minute, Maxine's a woman.
Oh, good, Maxine. I forgot about you. Thank you. I
And
feel
also
so
Melissa's a
unburdened.
woman. Aren't you, Melissa? You, I think, identifies as a
I
woman.
feel so unburdened. Thank you. Yeah,
But
exactly. I heard you at the
But we
time.
can get out of this binary thing. We don't have to always be men or women.
I feel it a lot, though.
We could be each other.
To hear Jack talk about weird again, by the way, you did this 2 months ago. You said that same sentence or something, you know. People are just weird, and it's not going to change. So if you're waiting for it to get fixed, it won't. I have used that family like 5 times a day for some reason. I've been saying, you know, people are just weird. People are weird. I'm weird. Other people are weird. So it's fun to hear you say it again, by the way. My kind of question is about loving kindness, the limits of loving kindness, or the intersection of loving kindness with challenge and trauma in life. So I've got a son who is maybe at risk of dying, and what I'm taught when we go to other support groups is what's really important is to turn it over, to let it go, and put it in the hands of the higher power. And so I keep working with that, with our work here, and I keep trying to make that connection going, so what does that mean for me? And I have 2 different confusing points. Some of the teaching on the other side is like, well, if you turn it over, when you turn it over, it will be taken care of. The universe will take care of, as though the universe is there to do the easy, beneficial, good thing for me, which is obviously protect my son, not let him die. My experience of turning it over to the universe is, even though, and you said, Trudy, we're all in this together, I have a clear feeling that we're all in this together, and there's a bigger thing, and it's benevolent. I feel all that. It doesn't mean in any way to me that my son can't die tomorrow. And so I'm just sitting here going, I can turn it over, but all I really want is, you know, give me a promise that it won't happen. And I know that can't exist. So I'm just trying to, like, resolve this issue if I can turn it over.
God,
I'd rather
I'm sorry
turn-
he's in trouble again. I'm sorry this is again.
Yeah. And it's just, this is the last little bit. I mean, everything else with him is fine. He's homeless, he's whatever, he's not now. If he is, it's fine. I'm loving it. It's his life, it's his path. He'll do that fine. The idea of him just leaving the planet is, I'm at that wall, and I go, well, embrace loving kindness. Just, it's there, and it's that little nub. I guess the point is we hit these moments in life where we're just, I don't know how how to make that part of loving kindness. And it is. I get it. It is. I don't know. Maybe that's just is, what it is, which is another thing I say.
Oh, and I hear you expressing a lot of equanimity and acceptance with the people are just weird, they're not going to change. He can have his life. If he's houseless, if he's housed, he'll do it fine. I trust him in certain ways to survive. But then when it becomes about not surviving, it's a whole different thing. It's a whole different thing. And maybe loving kindness in that situation is just weeping and praying. Maybe we have an idea that equanimity, having some acceptance of a situation, means that we have to have no feelings about it. I don't think that's true. It can't be true because we're feeling-full creatures, and especially with our children, even more than our parents, our children. So I actually think the best thing right now would be if we all just send some loving kindness to your son and to you guys, to the family. Let's just take a minute. We can do this together.
What's his name?
Spencer.
For Spencer, for Clark, for Robert, for your extended family.
And Lucas.
And Lucas. May you be safe and protected. May you recover and be well. May you live with ease. May you appreciate your life and love yourself. So thank you for sharing your heart this morning, and thank you everybody. I also want to say that we have a community member who is currently houseless, and if anybody has a room temporarily in their house, this has happened before where we've had somebody who needed a room and somebody did step forward and offer a room, and that person is now on her feet. She's renting her own room. She has a good job. You know, it worked out. So sometimes people just need some support to get through a rough patch, and then they can thrive. So if anybody has a room to temporarily offer, please see Akemi. Akemi is would you stand up, please? Akemi is our volunteer coordinator. We're so proud of having a designated team staff member, our volunteer coordinator. She's not a volunteer, she's paid staff. We're really happy about that. So if you have a room, if you have anything to help to offer, please go to see Akemi. And then also, this is our community, each other here. And of course, it's more than just us here, but it's us here. And to be able to extend a hand to each other when somebody is hurt or sick or houseless or whatever it may be is just it's one of the best ways that you can deepen your own practice and connection to the community. So if you have skills that you can volunteer, if you have money that you can donate, if you have time to give, we deeply appreciate your support, and we need your support. We don't know, this is a very uncertain week because we kind of don't know what's going to happen. So we really need each other more than ever in that way. And we did send out an email, which you may or may not have received, that we're having our centers cleaned extra numbers of times a week, and all the surfaces and doorknobs. And I walked in the office and I was just like, oh my God, everything's shining. I mean, it's always clean, but this was really clean. And we have hand sanitizer, and we encourage you to please stay home if you're not feeling well or have a cold, just even a cold, so that we can support each other staying healthy as well. And so thank you for being here this morning. Thank you for your practice. Thank you, Jack, for your teaching. And thank you for your support in whatever way you can give it. And we'll see you next week.
And you too, people. Thank you too for watching.
Oh, they're not here.
Oh, they're not.
It's next
YouTube?
time. Oh, YouTube. Oh, yeah, hi.
They are here.
YouTube, you too can donate. Thank you, everybody.